Hello and welcome back, all of my digital mutants. The doctor is in with your daily prescription fix for all things media. So today, we'll be looking at Mudbox 2015. What is Mudbox? Well, Mudbox is a digital sculpting program. It is primarily used to, as we just said, to sculpt, basically digital clay. So we can sculpt in it, we can paint in it, we can pose our characters in it, and we can also transfer high level detail to lower polygon models here inside of Mudbox. So if you've ever used anything like ZBrush or Sculptress or 3D Coat, then you'll be very much at home here inside of Mudbox. So let's look at the basic interface first of all. So first things first. Mudbox is a Maya style program. And what I mean by that, and the reason why I say it that way, is that it's Maya style, is the fact that when you're working inside of Mudbox, you have the ability to rotate, to dolly your camera in and out. So you can orbit your camera, you can dolly your camera, and they all work off of Maya controls. So your left mouse and your Alt key and your left mouse button will let you orbit your camera. Your right mouse button holding down the Alt key will let you dolly your camera in and out. And then the Alt key and the middle mouse button will let you actually pan your camera around your scene. So rotate or orbit, pan, and dolly. So that's our navigation. Our navigation is actually pretty simple to get through. So the next thing to look at is start looking at some of the viewports here inside of Mudbox. So the main viewport that we're looking at is our 3D view. So in our 3D view, well, it shows things that, well, you might have guessed it, that are in 3D. So if I come in here and load up just a basic head, I'm looking at this basic head here inside of Mudbox, I can see that it's loaded up in my 3D viewport, and I can see this and zoom into it, zoom away from it, and be able to manipulate everything inside of Mudbox. Fairly simple. Now I also have the view cube up here, so if you're a Max user, or even inside of Maya, they have the view cube in there. I'm not a particular fan of the view cube. It doesn't really do anything for me, for the simple fact that I can use my keys, just my normal keys inside of the program that I'm working with. So I'm me personally, I'm not a huge fan of the view cube. Doesn't really matter to me. But some people tend to love this thing. I'm a hit or miss person when it comes to the view cube. I think that it, in some ways, makes a little bit lazy not to get through your controls. So something's going on with the gimbal. Let's make sure everything's good. Let's load it back up. So as I can see, I'm able to navigate pretty simply. So I've got my 3D view. Right beside that I have a tab for my UV view. So you can see in here I can bring in my UVs, and this is 0 to 1 space. Now Mudbox does understand UDIM tiles. So the UDIM tiles that we would normally use in something like Mari can be used here inside of Mudbox. So all of these additional squares can be tiles for other textures if you're using a program that supports UV tiles. And then I have my image browser in here where I can look at my images and things that I'm going to be using inside of Mudbox. And then I have a Mudbox community tab, which takes me to Autodesk's, basically their community, right? So the community of what they have going on with Mudbox. So it's got tutorials and libraries of brushes and things of that nature, stencils, so all kind of things that you can think of, you can find them here. The one thing that I will say that I do not care for as much with the Mudbox community or the Autodesk communities is things seem to be a little less organized as, say, Pixelogic does with the stuff for ZBrush. ZBrush's community seemed to be a little bit more polished in how things are managed and administrated in the community. But that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to go back to 3D view. So if we go to the lower thirds of my screen, you can see down here I have my sculpt tool tray, my paint tool tray, curve tools, pose tools, and my select and move tools. I have a caliper to be able to measure things in my world. I can scale, rotate, and translate. I can also grab the UV shell, grab the border, object, or its faces. And in my pose tools, I can make a move pivot. I can weight something to a pivot, pose it, and create joints. Curve tools, I can create a curve, grab a curve, smooth it, erase it, do a loop curve, or make a border curve. And then my paint tools down here, I have an array of paint tools, from paintbrush to projection brush, my eyedropper, airbrush, dry brush, blur, dodge, and burn. So a lot of these tools are very familiar if you've used an image manipulation program such as Photoshop. You should be very familiar with like the dodge and burn and blur tools. The sponge tool does exactly what it sounds like. It sucks up the hue or the saturation from a color and will take it back to being grayscale. And I also have in here my sculpt tools. So I have my sculpt brush, smooth brush, my grab, my pinch, flatten, foamy, spray, repeat, imprint, wax, scrape, fill, knife, smear, bulge, amplify, freeze, mask, and erase. So this is kind of my tools tray over here. Now I have another tray over here which gives me my stamps, my stencils, my fall offs, which are really the brush tips. So these are really the tips of the brush. And then I have my material presets, my lighting presets, and I can even bookmark cameras and camera presets inside of here. On my right hand side, I have my other tray. So I have my layers tray, my object list, my viewport filters, and then below that I have the properties for any of the active tools that I'm using. So right now I'm using my sculpt brush, and you can see it has the size, the strength, whether I'm mirroring it, whether it's in an invert function, or if I'm using a stamp and what my stamp spacing and snap to curve and my steady stroke and even flooding and fall offs, and I can do some advanced stuff inside of here. So I'm going to send this into full screen mode. To send it into full screen mode, all I want to do is hit Control and T. So Control T will send Mudbox into full screen mode. And inside of full screen mode, you are able to have more desktop space to work with. The advantage of that is being able to really manipulate and get really close to your model. You want to spend that time getting close to your model, manipulating it, turning it, rotating it, because unlike other 3D programs, you really want to work on your model in perspective and tumble it and be able to get close and see it and do all those great things to it. So with that being said, we need to talk about how we can manipulate our tools. So one is being able to change the size of my brush. Yes, of course I could come over here and grab the size of it and type in a size and type in a strength. But I can also do that interactively. If I hold down the B key, so B for brush, and I use my left mouse button and drag left or right, you'll see my brush will get larger or smaller. If I hold down the M key for multiplier and go up or down, you see that the strength of my brush is either increased or decreased. So I can decrease it down to 0. I can increase it up to 40, whichever one you want. Now, the other way that you can change your brush size is, and remember we talked about this before, this is a Maya-like program. And when I say that, I mean that the camera controls are very Maya-like, but also when I hold down the space bar, I get this radial icon bar to come up here. So I can still get to everything that I need. If I come over here and left mouse click and hold, you'll see these are all my brushes. If I come here and left mouse click and hold, you see I can turn the grid off and on. I can turn on flat shading. I can display curves. I can turn off the lights. I can actually show both sides. I can even switch my view in here. So I can switch my view. So this is very much like how Maya has its Maya panel set up. So this is almost like the Mudbox panel. If I hold down spacebar again, I can get to my paint tools. I have my move tools, and I also have my edit materials, and all of my pose tools are in here. So you can see there's my pose tools. But then here in the center of this, I can click on this and left mouse drag, and it will make my brush larger, or I can left mouse drag and make my strength increase or decrease. So I get to the same tools by doing it here. And if I click right here, you can see I can choose a stencil, I can choose whether I turn on mirroring or not, and I can also come in here and randomize the stamp and have a fall off based off of the facing angle, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later, my steady stroke, and I can even undo from here and choose a color from here. So, and you'll see it gives you pop-ups when you're doing things that you can't currently do. But in a nutshell, that is really the interface, how I can get through it. Now, one other thing before we move on from the interface and do this is we also have in our layers, we have sculpt layers and we have paint layers. So of course, when you're sculpting, you can sculpt detail and put that on a layer by itself. And you can also, when you get ready to paint it, you can put your different layers of painting inside of Mudbox and save those things in here to be able to use. So you can do your, your diffuse, your speck, your reflectivity, and your normal maps can all be generated right here inside of Mudbox. So in our next video, what we're going to talk about is how to be able to bring in reference images here inside of Mudbox. And from there, we'll do a little bit of sculpting so I can show you how the process of sculpting inside of Mudbox really works. And we will do that in our next video.